You carry a silence inside you that no modern noise can quite drown out. It is a specific heavy kind of quiet, the kind that lived in wood-paneled living rooms
and empty kitchens while the sun set outside in 1978 or 1984.
You remember the weight of a metal key hanging from a piece of string around your neck, a cold reminder that you were the master of your own kingdom long before you were tall enough to reach the top shelf. While the world remembers the neon lights and the disco beats, you remember the sound of the refrigerator humming in an otherwise empty house. You are the architect of your own survival. But today, that same survival mechanism has become a fortress that even you find hard to leave.
You stand in a room full of people today and feel a strange, familiar distance.
You watch others ask for directions or seek emotional support with a sense of bewilderment,
as if they are speaking a language your brain was never wired to understand. To you, needing someone else feels like a glitch in the system. It feels like a weakness you can't afford.
But what you call being capable is often just a very old, very disciplined form of loneliness
that has masqueraded as strength for 40 years.
You aren't just an independent adult. You are a latchkey kid who grew up and realized the door is still locked from the inside. This hyper-independence is not a personality trait you chose. It is the biological fossil
of a world that expected you to be an adult while you were still losing your baby teeth.
In the 70s and 80s, the world was shifting. Parents were working longer, divorce rates were climbing, and the concept of supervision was a loose suggestion at best. You were told you were free, but your nervous system experienced that freedom as a mandate to never be a burden.
You learned to fix your own snacks, bandage your own scraped knees,
and swallow your own bad days because there was no one in the hallway to hear the echo. This created a specific neural pathway, a bypass where the need for connection was rerouted into the need for competence. If you were competent, you were safe. If you could handle it alone, you wouldn't be disappointed. Now, decades later, you find yourself exhausted, carrying the mental load of an entire family or a corporate department, yet you would rather burn out completely than ask for a hand. The thought of saying, "I can't do this alone," triggers a visceral reaction, a tightening in your chest that feels like shame. You have spent your life being the one who has it all together, but you are beginning to realize that having it all together is a very lonely way to live. You aren't broken and you aren't cold.
You are simply operating on an operating system designed for a world that isn't there anymore.
It is time to look at the key around your neck and realize that you are finally allowed to put it down. You are safe now, and the house doesn't have to be empty anymore. To understand the person you have become today, we have to look at the one your colleagues, your friends, and your family see every day. We call this the fixer. To the outside world, you are the rock. You are the person who never panics when the deadline looms or when the family crisis hits.
While everyone else is spiraling into emotional chaos, you simply move.
You enter a state of cold high-performance efficiency. You don't scream, you don't freeze, and you certainly don't cry.
Your brain has a specialized drawer where it neatly tucks away every inconvenient emotion, allowing your hands to stay steady and your mind to stay sharp.
But there is a silent, heavy cost to this competence. Inside your head, the internal monologue is not one of confidence, but of a relentless, exhausting drill sergeant. It whispers that if you stop moving, if you show even one crack in your armor, the entire world will collapse around you because you have convinced yourself that no one else is coming to catch the pieces. This is the shadow side of the 1980s ethos, the belief that your value is strictly tied to your utility.
You have become a human Swiss Army knife, useful to everyone around you, but increasingly dull and exhausted on the inside. To find the source of this architecture, we have to travel back to the neurological construction site of your childhood.
We have to look at the latchkey kid. Picture a child standing in a quiet kitchen as the sun begins to set. The lighting is low. The air is thick with that specific kind of late afternoon silence.
And there is no one there to ask what happened at school or if you are feeling okay.
This isn't just a nostalgic memory. It is where your brain was being wired for survival. When a child experiences consistent long periods of being alone and is forced to self-soothe, the amygdala, The brain's emotional alarm system develops a very specific high-frequency calibration.
It doesn't learn to scream for help because it has already calculated that help is a variable, not a constant.
Instead, it adapts by staying in a state of low-level constant hypervigilance.
You weren't just sitting there watching cartoons, you were subconsciously listening for the specific vibration of the car engine in the driveway, analyzing the sound of the front door closing to predict the mood of the house before a single word was spoken. Your cortisol levels didn't spike and drop like they should. They stayed at a steady, quiet simmer, teaching your nervous system that safety is something you must manufacture for yourself, not something you receive from others.
This is where the invisible child syndrome begins to take its deep root. You learned very early on that your big emotions were an inconvenience in a world where the adults were stressed, tired, or dealing with their own private shadows. So your brain performed a brilliant tragic maneuver. It severed the connection between feeling a need and expressing that need. In the 70s and 80s, the cultural narrative was to rub dirt on the wound and keep going. You were told not to cry, or you would be given something to cry about. This wasn't just a parenting style. It was an era-wide psychological blueprint that you absorbed into your bones. Your prefrontal cortex became an expert at logic and logistics long before it was ready to handle the weight of emotional intimacy. Think about the dopamine loops of that era compared to today. There were no instant notifications, no digital likes, no constant stream of external validation. Your only source of reward was the internal satisfaction of a task completed in isolation. You fixed the chain on your bike. You made your own dinner. You finished the project. This wired your brain to seek dopamine through solo achievement. You became addicted to the high of "I did it myself." Even now, decades later, receiving a gift or a genuine compliment feels slightly uncomfortable, almost like a debt you didn't ask for.
You would rather work 20 hours straight than owe someone a favor.
This is the biological echo of that empty house, the deeply held belief that the only thing you truly own and can rely on is the work of your own two hands. You are still that child in the kitchen making sure the lights are turned off and the doors are locked, waiting for a permission to relax that never quite arrived. You have been carrying the weight of the world for so long that you have forgotten that the world didn't actually ask you to hold it.
You have been running on an operating system designed for an emergency that ended 40 years ago, and your soul is finally starting to ask for a rest that your brain doesn't know how to give.
But here is the moment where the story shifts. Here is the part of the mirror where the cracks begin to look like veins of gold.
You have spent decades viewing your self-reliance as a scar of neglect, a heavy armor that keeps the world at a distance.
You look at the modern world, a world of instant connection, constant digital validation, and a desperate need for external approval, and you might feel like a relic.
You might feel like the silence you carry is a deficit, but the truth is exactly the opposite.
What you possess is a psychological superpower that the modern world is desperately trying to relearn. You are the alchemist. You are the individual who transformed the lead of isolation into the gold of absolute emotional sovereignty. While others are tethered to the constant feedback of the digital hive mind, you have an internal lighthouse that does not require a signal to function.
You have the rare, profound ability to stand in the center of a storm and remain anchored to your own center of gravity because you have already survived the ultimate storm, the storm of being alone before you were ready. This is not just independence. This is the mastery of the internal landscape.
Because you grew up without a constant audience, you developed a version of the self that is not performance-based. Your value system was built in the quiet of those empty afternoons, forged by your own observations rather than by likes, comments, or public consensus. This created a highly resilient default mode network in your brain. While others panic in the absence of external stimulation, your brain knows how to navigate the silence. You have an internal library of resources, a mental survival kit that is always packed and ready. You don't just solve problems. You have a relationship with reality that is unmediated and raw. You are the last generation that knows how to wait, how to wonder, and how to fix things that are broken instead of just replacing them. This translates into a professional and personal grit that is becoming the most valuable currency in a fragile world. When the system fails, when the Wi-Fi goes down, when the social structures tremble, you are the one who knows how to keep the fire burning. Think about the psychological concept of self-regulation. Most people today are co-regulators. They need another person or a device to help them manage their stress. You are the person who doesn't need a manual because you spent your entire childhood writing your own. But you were forced to become a master of self-regulation at age 8.
You learned how to breathe through the fear, how to talk yourself through the dark, and how to find wonder in a cardboard box or a dusty book.
This has given you an extraordinary capacity for deep focus and long-term endurance. You are the marathon runner of the psyche.
You can endure what would break others because your threshold for discomfort was calibrated in a much harder era.
This isn't a burden, it is a fortress. You are not cold, you are concentrated.
You are not distant, you are discerning. You have a psychological detector that is honed to a razor's edge because you grew up in a world where you had to see things exactly as they were to survive.
Now look at the twist. The very distance you feel from others is actually your most powerful filter. It ensures that when you finally do let someone in, it is not because you are desperate for a rescue, but because you have found someone worthy of entering your sanctuary.
Your love is not a needy grab for safety. It is a conscious, powerful choice made by a person who already knows they can survive without it.
That makes your connections deeper, more intentional, and far more resilient than the fast-paced, fragile bonds of the digital age. You are the bridge between two worlds, the world of the handwritten letter and the world of the instant message.
You carry the wisdom of the analog soul into the digital chaos.
You are the guardian of the quiet. You are the master of the self. You are the latchkey kid who finally realized that the house wasn't empty because you were unloved. The house was empty so you could learn how to fill it with the immense power of your own spirit.
You are not just a survivor. You are a pioneer of a type of strength the world is only just beginning to name.
So, as you stand in the quiet of your own life today, carrying the echoes of a decade that feels like a lifetime ago, remember that old radio we talked about? That sturdy, heavy machine with the silver dials and the wooden frame. The one that could find a signal in a thunderstorm and never seemed to quit no matter how many times it was moved or dropped. That radio is the perfect mirror for your soul. You have spent 40 years priding yourself on the fact that you do not need a wall socket. You have convinced yourself that you can run on internal batteries forever, and that needing to be plugged into someone else's support is a design flaw. But even the most resilient machine needs maintenance to keep the static away.
For a long time, you thought that the hum of loneliness in the background was just the price of being strong. You thought that being the one who everyone calls but who never calls anyone back for help was your greatest achievement. But the truth is that your signal is much clearer and your voice is much louder when you are connected to a power source larger than yourself.
Needing a partner to hold the weight of your bad day, or asking a friend to help you navigate a problem isn't a sign that your batteries are dying.
It is how you ensure that you don't burn out in the dark.
The world you grew up in taught you that your value was measured by how much you could endure without complaining. It taught you that a scraped knee was just a lesson in gravity and that being alone was just a lesson in independence. You learned those lessons so well that they became your default setting. But the landscape has changed. You are no longer that child in the wood-paneled living room waiting for the sound of a key in the lock. You are the one who holds the key now, and you have the power to decide who gets to walk through that door. Your hyper-independence was a magnificent shield when you were small and vulnerable. But today it has become a heavy weight that prevents you from feeling the very warmth you've been working so hard to provide for everyone else. You have spent your life being the adult in the room even when you were still a child. It is finally time to give that child permission to rest. You have already proven that you can survive. Now it is time to prove to yourself that you can be supported.
Tomorrow, I want you to try a micro step that might feel more terrifying than any crisis you have ever managed with your eyes closed.
I want you to intentionally create a small moment of vulnerability. I want you to ask for help with something that you could easily do yourself.
Ask a colleague to double-check a simple email. Ask your partner to take over a small chore without giving them a list of instructions on how to do it. Ask a friend for their honest opinion on something you are struggling with. As you do this, pay close attention to the physical sensation in your body. You will likely feel a tightening in your chest or a voice in your head telling you that you are being a burden. That is your old 1980s operating system trying to protect you from a danger that no longer exists.